I feel like I'm a little bit too close here, but I can't really find anywhere else to do this. So here's the whiteboard, and pardon me if I'm looking over here in the direction of the flip out screen on the camera, because I need to be able to see to make sure everything is still in shot. So this is the game plan for the day of the Tour Stations. So what I've got here is basically a summary of kind of certain factors and certain things that I'm going to expect to come up against, or things that I know are going to happen. There's obviously some things that I know that will happen but are out of my control. And a lot of you have asked, I've had some questions already on Instagram, like along the lines of, you know, what's going to be your pacing strategy, what you're going to eat, you know, what's the day before like, and things like that. And I'm going to divulge all of that right now. So before we get into this, let's start from the very top. So I've done all my training leading up to this. I've done a couple, maybe 3 rides that have been over 6 hours in length, with, you know, various efforts in that, long sustained efforts that I know are going to be very, very similar to what I am going to need to do at the Tour Stations. So, you know, that's been like 30-minute blocks, 1-hour blocks at like upper zone 3 sweet spot. And so I've really kind of reaped the benefits of that in the last week and a half, now that I've been slowly kind of, you know, backing off that intensity in the build up to the event itself. So this is an UltraFondo. It's part of the Marmot series, but I wouldn't say necessarily, I'm not necessarily treating it as a race. It's a race against myself, in a sense that I've never done this kind of duration and amount of climbing either before. So it's an unknown as well. So I've read some of your comments on previous YouTube videos about, like, you know, beware that, you know, it's going to be a really long event, and it's more like an ultra endurance event rather than like a race that I've ever done before. And I 100% get that. You know, I'm not going into this with any kind of expectations whatsoever. Apart from the fact that I'm going to give it my best, I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to enjoy it. So now we're coming up to, like, today's Wednesday, but this video is obviously not going out on the Wednesday. I'm having to schedule these in advance. So what you'll find now is these are my thoughts a few days before the event. But of course, when this goes up, you'll have a chance to comment down below, and I'll still be able to see, you know, what you guys are saying even before the event starts. So if you've got any last minute things, let me know in the comment section down below. So this is what we got so far. First of all, I've got like very, very basic breakdown of the event. So it's going to be 8 to 9 hours-ish, 500 TSS or so, 290 normalized power is probably the top of what I'm going to be able to sustain, going off kind of the basis of what I've done in the past, and how much work I'm going to be doing. So 8,000 kilojoules, and then obviously how much am I going to need to eat. So nutrition comes into that, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So there's a couple of factors that I put down. So we've got weather, we've got nutrition, distance, travel, gearing, crunch points, pacing, and then the list of climbs are all on there. So, you know, the weather, first things first, like I've checked the weather a dozen times and it says like 25 degrees and like 2 mile an hour. So I don't think it can get any better. Obviously at altitude, the highest peak is 2,175 meters above sea level. So that's the last climb of the day. And that's where the actual finish line is anyway. So it's going to be a little bit colder at those peaks, but not so much. That's why I'm thinking of taking a gilet rather than like a rain cape or anything like that, especially as the weather is supposed to be fairly good. And I've spoken to a couple of people and they've assured me as well that even at the altitude it'll be fairly decent for this time of year. So the longest downhill is only like 20 minutes, so I'm thinking just gilet and arm warmers, and yeah, we'll be okay for, you know, it's not like an hour downhill like the Glibia, for example. And then looking at winds, there's hardly any wind, and then like I said, gilet, gloves, arm warmers, things along that line. So then I was thinking nutrition. So I've got this over on this side, and nutrition is a difficult one because, you know, nutrition is kind of, you can train it and you can obviously like prepare, But usually on the day that kind of goes out the window, depending on like, you know, if you get caught up in riding in a group and things like that. So what I've roughly worked it out as, if I'm able to get 90 grams of carbohydrate an hour, which is like probably the maximum I can probably sustain, then I'm looking at like 720 grams of carbs consumed during the event. And then how am I going to get that in? So during, I'm looking at, you know, Cliff Bars is what I'll be using, and they're like 40 to 45 grams of carbs per bar as standard, and then 2 sachets of beta fuel. And I was thinking of carrying more with me, but there are services. There are actually like feed zones along the coast, but I know, and I'm fully aware, the real serious guys who are like going for the fastest times, they'll have actual like people out on the course handing them out water bottles and handing out food and stuff like that, so they won't have to stop. So I'm fully aware of that, and that's why I'm going to go for a frame bag. I'm highly likely going to go for a frame bag that doesn't add it adds like 100 grams of extra weight to my whole bike, but it allows me to put all my food in there, and then any extra food that I want, I can have an emergency like pit stop at, you know, one of these kind of stations. So you know, I'm not worried about like not being able to have enough food. Water, same goes for that. Like I can literally just stop, and within 20 seconds I've got water and go. Bearing in mind that like I know there could be a queue at, you know, to fill up water at a stop, but I will make like a conscious effort to either be on my own coming to a stop, so I don't have to queue. And things like that. So these are just like thoughts at the minute. But breakfast, this is the thing. A number of you will know, like, because I have got up early to do early rides in preparation for this. I'm not gonna get up especially early. This event starts, so we are off at 5, and I'm gonna put the link down below, the tracking link, so you'll be able to see where I am on the course. It's also going to be live broadcast from like midday on the Tour de Stations Facebook page of the front of the UltraFondo race. So you can catch us there. And my bib number is 66. So yeah, that's what you have to look out for. But basically, I'm thinking, because it starts at 5, I have to be kind of in the start area roughly for like 4:30 onwards. I'm not going to have a massive breakfast. Like, even though this is a huge event, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to have a massive breakfast, because I understand the need for, like, you know, for fueling for this event is massive, but fueling on the bike is more important than what I'm going to eat, like, in the 2 or 3 hours before this event. And this is probably, like, the biggest takeaway from this as well, is that I understand my body, and I know how I respond to food, you know, really early. And I know there's a climb straight away, straight out the first pen, at the starting gate, so I don't want to go crazy on breakfast, but what I am going to do is go crazy the night before. So a couple of other things whiz through this now. Gearing. I'm running, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a bike setup video as well. 52-36 is what I'm running, so 52 big chain rings, 36 small, and then 12-30, 30-12. So what that allows me, and that's a Huish cassette, so what that allows me to do is, like, I have the option now of being able to ride, you know, a 36-30 as my smallest gear, and that'll really help me on the steepest sections, which there are some, like in the middle of some of these climbs. But it'll also allow me to ride kind of middle of the cassette with a better chain line. So I'm not necessarily kind of, I know we're talking marginal gains here, but I'm not necessarily like losing a couple of watts by having like a really awkward chain line. Considering that, you know, most of the day, if not, well, like if I'm riding for 9 hours, for example, like it's going to be like 7 hours, 45 minutes of the whole ride is going to be climbing. So the more time I spend kind of with that straight chain line, which I probably will be in the same gear roughly every single climb, judging by the gradients, then, you know, that's better. And also, I'm not changing gear all the time, and it's not messing with my head. So small things like that. And you'll notice it's not an 11, there's only a 12 on there. I'm not going to need the 11. There's a couple of sections where you do get up to like 80k an hour tops, but like, you know, will I really need an 11 sprocket? Probably not, you know. So much climbing, very little descending. it's probably not going to bother me. I'm not bothered, actually. So then I was thinking, like, which stops will I go for? And I've actually created a little, I don't know whether they'll give me one of these anyway on the day, but I've created one anyway for myself. So what we've got here is total distance, then we've got com length, and then feed. So these are my choices. The green squares are like where the feed I could use. The red squares are like the crunch climbs, where I think are the climbs that are going to cause like the most problems for a lot of people, and myself, not forgetting myself. And then the total distance makes it a lot easier for me to kind of tick off those kilometers and see where I'm going. So the crunch points I've noted really are here, because you've done so much climbing up to here. You have a very long descent, which is the longest descent of the whole event. You're bound to get a little bit cold in the descent. Regardless how warm it is, you're bound to get a little bit stiff, cold. You've got to keep those legs moving. When you get to the bottom, and then bang, straight up into the climb. So here is probably going to be like where people are like, oh, my leg's a bit stiff, like take me a while to get going. So I just got to be aware that could happen to me on that climb, and that's going to be about, I guess 4.5, 5 hours in. The other crunch point as well is like here in this area, which is like 180 kilometers out of the 240. So these last two climbs are like pretty big, even though there's kind of more sustained climbing here. Like this section, you have to remember as well, like never drops below like 1,000 meters above sea level. So you're kind of always at some kind of altitude, I guess, in this final part, which is going to play a part as well. And then I've noted the crunch points right there. So pacing and list of climbs, I've got to put question marks on, because I didn't really feel the need to kind of put these on, because I had a conversation with a couple of people about pacing. And the thing is with the pacing is, somebody asked the question on Instagram, am I likely to go off and like follow the faster riders, or try and stay in a group for as long as possible, or am I likely to just ride my own pace the whole day? And something we talked about was like, well, up until here at least, like the halfway mark, like it's probably my best interest to stay with as many people as possible, and then from here on is kind of, I guess, your own race, because this is where you start getting deep into the event and into the unknown. But I think from here to here, it's going to be important to save energy, ride with the wheels, not so much on the climbs, but maybe on the descents at least, because there are some flatter sections between the climbs. But my thinking was, looking at what people sustain over these and what you guys have told me, the faster riders sustain over these type of events, their power is actually really incredible on these climbs, and they don't really fatigue much on this end. The people who raced at the highest level at this event last year, they rode very well up until here, and nearly every single one in the top 10 went from, say, let's call it like 5 watts per kilo of sustained climbing here, to like the last 2 climbs, they were down to like 2.5, 3 watts per kilo. And when you think about the final climb being an hour long, the difference between like riding at 5 watts per kilo in that final hour climb actually makes it 55 minutes. But if you go down to 2.5 watts per kilo, the climb extends to like an hour and 10. So that's a big difference. So to answer the question, like, would I rather ride my own pace or stay with other people? It'll be a bit of half and half, but I always need to look after myself. So it doesn't matter what happens in the event, I'm number one. So if somebody puts in an attack here, or it kicks off really early, I'm probably not gonna respond. I'm probably gonna ride my own pace and hope that I can, still hold myself together here to pick off, the kilometers, or pick off the riders, whatever situation it ends up being in. I've been told that this is more of like an ultra endurance ride rather than like any race I've ever done, which I completely get. So I'm likely to treat this like one big training ride rather than a race. It's more about like who's got the most resources left, in the last 2 hours, rather than, who's going to put in the big attack. you know, the lightning attack at whatever point it may be. It'll be more like a grind, I imagine. But I don't care what happens. Like, I'm just really excited to do it. So, list of climbs. There is a big list, but the majority of them are like well, I've got them written down here. There's like the first one is 12.7k at like 6-7%. They're all basically in the same ballpark. There's the shorter ones, so the 10k one, which is the second climb, is 10k long, around 8%. And then the one that has the crunch point here is like, it comes at 141 kilometers in, and it's 11k, and that's at like almost 10%. So, you know, that's going to be quite like tough on the legs when we get like halfway through. So it's good. Yeah, it is going to be a hard event, but I hope I've covered like a lot of the stuff. The day before, like the travel, I said there wasn't much I could really do about it, given the situation, like what's happening with flights and things. I've only managed to get a flight like the day before on the Friday, and it's at midday leaving Gatwick basically, so I have to land and fly in. I won't get to the accommodation near the start. It is really near the start, to be fair, but I won't get there until like 9 p.m. probably on Friday night. And bearing in mind Switzerland is an hour in front, hour behind, but you know, bearing in mind like it'll be a long day of traveling, it will take a little bit out of me for the event itself, but because the event itself won't require any maximal, you know, FTP riding or above, it won't take, like, in terms of that effort, it won't take like the sting out of me, so to speak. I'll just be a little bit, I guess, physically tired from traveling and, you know, getting up early as well. So I just got to accept that. I just got to accept the fact that it won't be the best. But given the current situation, you know, I can't complain about it. So yeah, like I said, if there's any other questions, anything I've missed, then punch a comment down below and I'll get back to you ASAP. If not, then I will just like, I'll try and remember the questions and I'll try and answer them on the fly during the event. The event itself, I don't know what kind of footage I'm going to get from. I'm saying that now, and I'll probably say that in the next video as well, if there is another video. But yeah, we're just going to get from it what we can and enjoy it and try and document like our like point of view of this like quite frankly incredible event that just is mind-blowing. You know, 240k with almost 9,000 meters of elevation. So yeah.